Hello and welcome to this edition of Planet Hope here on France 24, the programme dedicated to the UN Millennium Development Goals. This week we're in Burundi, one of the poorest countries in the world, looking at primary education. For decades, civil war ravaged the nation, leaving thousands of Hutu and Tutsi children without parents or homes. This week, our correspondents are reporting from the Maison Shalom, a facility set up by Maggie Barankitse, who through the years has helped and cared for thousands of young, lost and abused children. Civil war in Burundi came to an end back in 2005, but with old tensions resurfacing, Maison Shalom is as critical as ever.
This is Maggie, a woman who's been like a mother to around 20,000 children. To those here, she's known simply as Omar. It's difficult to know exactly the numbers that have passed through Maison Shalom. Marguerite Barankitse took in her first orphans 20 years ago. Today, in the school she's founded, she's taking care of another generation of children.
This is Myrna, here is Noemi and little Brunella. They're all my children, the second generation who could break this cycle of violence.
These children aren't all orphans. Maggie's helped kids from families who can't afford to look after them or whose parents are sick or have HIV. Many arrive seriously traumatised, like this little girl who was raped.
Has she started to speak yet?
No, she still doesn't even say her name.
Maison Shalom is based in Ruyigi, in East Burundi. Here, children were the blameless victims of the civil war between Hutus and Tutsis. It was in the middle of this conflict that Maggie found her vocation. Outside Ruyigi's main church, she remembers what happened here one Sunday in October 1993, when the massacres began.
I heard the sound of stones being thrown, and I looked over the fence and recognised some people and saw they were Tutsi.
Tutsi like Maggie. She tried to hide her Hutu friends, but they were executed in front of her. One, before she died, entrusted to Maggie her two children.
She said, Maggie, take Lydia and Lisette and promise me that you'll raise them like your own children.
After the massacre, Maggie received 25 children into her care, Hutus and Tutsis alike, little Lydia amongst them, aged just 2. Lydia now lives in the capital Bujumbura. She's 20 and a student. She's starting to take care of children herself.
Have you got any sponsors?
It's been a bit difficult.
Lydia's been trying to raise money to fund a new project at Maison Shalom, which Maggie put into operation a few months ago, creating a centre for children who have lived in prison with their mothers.
It started with us, and now there are other children who are going to have a chance to live, to have a successful life like us. It makes me happy because it means that Maison Shalom is carrying on the same work that it's done from the very beginning.
All these children were born in prison where their mothers themselves were prisoners. But there are still many who remain behind bars, and Maggie is trying to get them out.
I was in a town where there were young children in prison. I spoke to one and he told me, I'm here because they accuse me of stealing a goat. I asked how long he'd been there and he said 2 years. I asked, how old were you when you came here? And he said, 11. 11 years old. I couldn't sleep after that.
Whenever possible, children don't stay here permanently. The objective of Maison Shalom has always been to get children back within a family, with a grandmother or an aunt, or even a neighbour, so that they can experience life in a real home. Burundi is one of the world's poorest countries, and for charities, government funding is impossible to obtain. To raise money, Marguerite Barankitse has to look abroad, towards NGOs like Caritas, but mainly to private donors. Maison Shalom has become the most important non-governmental organisation in Burundi. It runs multiple projects. It's Richard Nijambiri who's in charge of the day-to-day running. He's Hutu and came to Maggie at Maison Shalom suffering from severe burns incurred during the Civil War. Today, he meets with an old friend from Maison Shalom, Aileen. Aileen, a Tutsi, narrowly survived the inter-ethnic massacres. She was seriously wounded in the neck by a machete at the age of 5. Maggie saved her life, sending her abroad for medical treatment.
Do you remember when I arrived with all my burns and you with all your injuries? And do you remember little Dominique who lost an eye? But despite everything, we had fun together, trying to balance food on our faces.
We came from different ethnic groups, but because we all had problems, I understood that one group hadn't suffered more than the other. So I forgave very quickly. I forgave the people for what they did to me.
Sometimes when I'm at a church, I pass the people who hurt me. The first time I saw them, I could see in their eyes that they thought I was dead. They looked down at the floor and changed direction.
I can't meet those who hurt me because I was too young when it happened. But anyway, I don't feel bitter. I've forgiven them.
Both Richard and Aileen grew up in a Maison Shalom's children's home in Ruigi, where Richard now takes us.
Before I went to study in Russia, I lived in that house, next to the tree, with my 3 sisters.
Maison Shalom doesn't have one main orphanage site. The children who can't be placed within a family live in these little individual houses, 5 under each roof, under adult supervision. In Burundi, the majority of young people are jobless or employed in casual labour. Maison Shalom tries to find work for the young people who as children pass through its care. Here, in what's known as the City of Angels, they've opened over 50 commercial businesses, a garage, a dressmaker's, a hairdresser's, employing in all 50 young people. But Maggie is always planning bigger and better things. In 2008, she opened this hospital, thanks to private funding. The Rima Hospital now employs nearly 300 people. After years of charitable works, the founder of Maison Shalom has received many international accolades. But to get to this stage, it's been a difficult and sometimes lonely journey.
At one time, she had 250 children under the age of 3, and there was no one she could turn to help find milk. She didn't have the support that she has now. No one wanted to house them all. Sometimes she found lodgings in Bujumbura. Little street boys would help her and say, "Mother, come sleep with us," and she would sleep outside. So now when you see what she's done and think it looks easy, it's not all been easy at all.
Over the last few months, the number of people seeking treatment here has grown. Burundi's civil war ended in 2005, but tensions are resurfacing. In 1 week alone, 6 patients arrived here with gunshot wounds, victims of armed groups, like this 10-year-old boy, shot in the leg.
I don't know who shot my son. It was nighttime, and he was with his grandmother. All I know is that he was surprised by a group of armed men. There are more and more of them here.
Faced with the worsening situation, insecurity is mounting. But Maggie doesn't lose courage. She instead appeals to the Burundian authorities.
I'm not bitter. I have enough energy to continue. Around me, it's true, I have a loyal team. But I feel betrayed by the politicians and the leaders of this country. We must establish a social dialogue. I don't want to be forceful. I'm going to find that dialogue, find the right words without violent means.
For victims of violence here, medical treatment is free for the very poorest. Tonight, there's a special concert in the City of Angels. This musician is a former Maison Shalom resident. Bosco went blind, aged 7. When his mother died, Maggie took him in and gave him his first music lessons. It's here that Maggie draws her strength, surrounded by her children, who she's rescued, fed, housed and raised, whatever their ethnic background.
Well, that's it for this edition of Planet Hope. Don't forget you can watch this programme and all our other programmes again by logging onto our website, france24.com. That's france24.com. Bye-bye.